You know those days when everything seems calm and quiet, and then suddenly, drama comes knocking at your door. Well, that was me last Sunday. I had just finished a long shift at work, feeling exhausted but relieved that I could finally enjoy my day off. My plan was simple. Stop by the grocery store, grab a few essentials, and head home for some peace and quiet. But of course, fate had other plans, because in my neighborhood, peace is the one thing Karen can't stand. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the homeowners association, is known for her strict rules and loud opinions. If you breathe too loudly, she'll send you a notice. If your grass is half an inch too long, expect an email. And heaven forbid you park your car in the wrong spot, she'll practically call in the National Guard. So when I pulled up in my driveway with 2 grocery bags in hand, I should have known something was about to go down. I barely stepped out of my car when I heard her voice, sharp and judgmental, slicing through the quiet evening air. "Excuse me, are those groceries for you?" she demanded, glaring at me like I had just robbed a bank. I was confused. What kind of question was that? Of course, the groceries were for me. Before I could respond, she launched into one of her infamous rants. "You know the law has guidelines about using neighborhood stores for community purposes only, right? You can't just hoard supplies." Her tone dripped with entitlement, like she owned not only the neighborhood but my personal life too. I calmly explained that these were my personal groceries, paid for with my own money. But Karen wasn't having it. She crossed her arms, eyes narrowing, and with a smug smile said the words I least expected, "I'm calling the cops." I almost laughed. Call the cops? For buying groceries? Really? But Karen wasn't joking. She whipped out her phone, dialed the number, and started reporting me like I was some dangerous criminal. All the while, I stood there, amused, because little did she know, calling the cops was the biggest mistake she could make that day. As Karen furiously jabbed her finger at her phone screen, barking out my address to the dispatcher, I stood there silently, almost entertained by the absurdity. But then things took an uglier turn. From the corner of my eye, I saw a tall figure approaching, her son. Let's call him Brad, the poster child for entitlement. Early 20s, baseball cap backward, smug grin plastered across his face like he'd just won the lottery. Brad wasn't exactly known for being polite. In fact, the whole neighborhood knew about his little attitude problem. But today, he was about to outdo himself. "Yo," he said, swaggering toward me like he owned my driveway. "You got all that food? Cool. Hand it over." I froze for a second, thinking I misheard him. "Excuse me?" I asked, still holding my grocery bags. "You heard me," he sneered. "Give me those bags. We need them more than you." His eyes flicked over me in that way, like I didn't belong, like I wasn't good enough to live in their neighborhood. And then he said it, the thing that turned my amusement into pure fire. "People like you shouldn't be buying up all the stuff. Leave some for the rest of us. People like me." There it was, the ugly truth in plain sight. This wasn't about groceries, this was about his deep-rooted arrogance and prejudice. Karen didn't even flinch when he said it, she just smirked, as if his words were gospel. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "These are my groceries, bought with my money. You're not getting a single thing." Brad stepped closer, puffing out his chest like he was auditioning for a bad reality show. "You think you can talk to me like that? I'm telling you one last time, give me the bags." By now, my patience was hanging by a thread. This wasn't just entitlement. This was aggression mixed with racism, and Karen was standing there nodding like some cheerleader for bad behavior. I gripped my grocery bags tighter, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "Son, you have no idea who you're dealing with." Because the twist was coming, and they were about to regret every word. The silence that followed my words was thick enough to cut with a knife. Brad stared at me, his smirk faltering just a little, but his ego wouldn't let him back down. Karen, however, looked smug as ever, probably imagining me being dragged away in handcuffs for grocery shopping. "Who I'm dealing with?" Brad scoffed, giving me that condescending little chuckle people use when they think they're in control. "You're just some neighbor who got lucky enough to live here. You don't make the rules, we do." Karen jumped in like a backup singer for bad decisions. "That's right. And as soon as the police get here, you'll learn to respect the law." She stressed those last 3 letters like they were the supreme law of the land. Inside, I was laughing. Outwardly, I kept my cool, letting them dig their own hole deeper and deeper. Brad puffed his chest out even more, now standing so close that if he moved an inch, he'd be breathing my air. "You can give me the groceries now," he said, voice dripping with entitlement, "or you can explain yourself to the cops." Oh, the irony. The sweetest irony. Because what Karen and Brad didn't know was that explaining myself to the cops wasn't going to be a problem, not for me, anyway. I tilted my head slightly, studying their faces, the arrogance, the false confidence, the complete lack of awareness. "You're sure you want to call them?" I asked calmly, like I was giving them one last chance to save themselves from what was coming. Karen crossed her arms and sneered. "Absolutely. They're on their way. You'll regret this attitude." That was when my phone buzzed in my pocket. One glance at the screen, and I almost laughed out loud. The dispatcher had texted me personally. "Commander, unit dispatched. ETA 2 minutes. Too bad for Karen. Too bad for Brad. They thought they were summoning the cavalry to humiliate me. Little did they know, the cavalry was mine." I looked up at them, a slow smile curling at the edge of my lips. "All right," I said softly. "Let's wait for the police, then." And that's when I knew. The next 2 minutes were going to be unforgettable. 2 minutes. That's all it took for the familiar sound of sirens to pierce the quiet neighborhood. The look on Karen's face when she heard them. Priceless. Her smug grin widened as if she had just won the neighborhood lottery. Brad, on the other hand, stood taller, straightening his cap like he was about to watch his favorite action movie unfold live. "They're here," Karen said triumphantly, like she had summoned divine justice itself. "Now, let's see what you have to say for yourself." I just smiled, calm, collected, and waiting for the moment that would turn this entire situation on its head. A patrol car rolled up slowly, lights flashing, engine humming like a warning. The door opened, and out stepped 2 uniformed officers, both of whom immediately locked eyes with me. Their postures shifted, their faces brightened with respect. "Commander," the taller officer called out, walking toward me with a grin. "Didn't expect to find you out here." The silence that fell after that single word, "Commander," was pure gold. Karen's mouth dropped open like a cartoon character. Brad blinked rapidly, as if trying to reboot his brain. "Commander," Karen stuttered, looking between me and the officers. "What do you mean, Commander?" I turned to face her slowly, savoring the moment. "It means," I said, voice calm but firm, "that you just called the cops on the person who commands them." Brad's smugness evaporated faster than water on hot asphalt. "Wait, what? You're a cop," he muttered, his voice cracking under the weight of reality. "Not just a cop," the second officer chimed in with a grin, clearly enjoying the show. "She's our boss. So, what seems to be the problem here, ma'am?" Karen's face turned a shade of red that could put a stop sign to shame. She stumbled over her words, trying desperately to backpedal. I just thought. I mean, the groceries, the rules." I held up a hand, silencing her with a look that could freeze fire. "You called us for groceries?" I asked, my tone sharp now. "And allowed your son to demand someone else's property while throwing racist remarks." Karen's confidence crumbled. Brad looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. Meanwhile, the officers stood beside me, waiting for my word. And trust me, justice was about to be served. Karen stood frozen, her Queen crown shattered, while Brad avoided eye contact like a guilty toddler caught with his hand in the cookie jar. The silence was suffocating, until I broke it. "Officers," I said calmly, never taking my eyes off the mother-son duo. "Here's what happened. I came home with my groceries, and these 2 decided to harass me, make racist comments, and attempt to take my property. Then, they wasted department resources with a false report." The taller officer's jaw tightened as he turned to Karen. "Ma'am, is that true?" Karen stammered like a broken engine. I didn't mean, I just thought. You thought you could bully someone because of who they are." I finished for her, my voice cold as steel. "And you thought calling the cops would help you. Too bad it didn't." Brad finally spoke, his voice dripping with desperation. "Come on, it was just groceries. No big deal, no big deal." I raised an eyebrow. "You demanded my property and made a racial remark. That's harassment, and technically, attempted theft." Brad's bravado vanished like smoke in the wind. "I didn't mean it like that." The officers didn't waste time. "Ma'am, sir, we're going to need a statement from both of you, one said firmly. False emergency calls and harassment are serious matters. Karen's jaw dropped. Wait, we're in trouble. Oh, you're more than in trouble, I replied, folding my arms. Harassing a law enforcement officer off duty. That's a whole new level of stupid. Brad muttered something under his breath, but the officers moved in, noting down details and warning them of possible charges. Karen tried pulling the classic WA immunity card, babbling about being a pillar of the community. The officers didn't even flinch. As the reports wrapped up, I turned to Karen one last time. Next time you think about calling the police to flex your power, I said softly, leaning just enough for my words to land like a dagger, remember, you might just call me again. The officers escorted Karen and Brad back to their house, faces pale and dignity shattered. I picked up my groceries, walked inside, and smiled. Justice had been served. Cold, like the ice cream waiting in my bag. Because sometimes, karma doesn't need time. Sometimes, it arrives with sirens.